It's good to be here again. I'm still on the same subject, but before we get started, anybody got anything to pray about? Brother Scott just texted me. His mom got admitted to the hospital last night, and Sister Dawn's mom got admitted to the hospital last night, so pray for both of them. Anything else? We got youth camp in, what's that, 3 weeks, 2 weeks and a half? 2 weeks, okay. Time flies. So, and then all day meeting in 6 weeks or something. So we got a lot going on. Anything else we need to pray about? I think we got a couple of weddings coming up in the next 3 or 4 weeks too. So a lot going on. So pray for all that. Anything else? If nothing else, Brother Tony, you'll lead us. The reason I started this series was to show why Muslims and Christians and Jews and Arabs will always be at war, always be at least at all with one another. There's never going to be peace in the Middle East as long as the world stands. But it goes way back. The world tells you 600 AD is when it started, but it was much, much longer than that. So we started a long time ago. Not going to try to get into all of it. I can't repeat all of it because we've been 4 or 5 certain lessons into it. But just from 2 weeks ago, I want to real quickly get us up to speed. In Genesis chapter 15, we read about Abraham. It was Abram at the time, his name was Abram. He receives a promise from God of a seed. And then you read the whole story about that. In chapter 16, so in 15 he gets a promise. In 16 he gets a covenant. And he gets a promise of a promised land. And we showed 2 weeks ago the borders of that land that God promised them, that there was a promise of a certain amount of land. Then I also showed you last week the same exact land was already given to them when Solomon was reigning. So God has already fulfilled that promise of the land promise. He did not promise them land twice. They gave it up whenever they backslid and left him. So he owes them nothing, Brother Allen. And so that he has fulfilled his covenant with them. And then verse 7, in chapter 17, we find a sign of that promise was circumcision. So that's where we were at last week. Then, I will try to show you. The first part of this lesson is going to be old history. We've studied the Old Testament for years and years, so it's not going to be anything new. There's going to be a lot of old information, but I got some new information on the other stuff. When we get into the other lineage of Ishmael, it may be some information you don't know yet. I'm going to tell you up front, I am asking and getting, not advice, I'm getting information also from a Muslim. He's a friend of mine. He and I don't agree, obviously, but we're cordial with one another. We're friends. I've helped him move stuff with my truck. He actually asked me to move something this week with my truck. So, but I want to know, I don't want to tell you false information, even if it is a false doctrine. I want to give you the truth. I don't want to get up here and just spout out what I've heard. I want to give you the truth. So I'm trying to find out more about the Muslim religion before I tell you that. But I can tell you where it came from. That much is public knowledge. So with that being said, after God promised him a son and a seed, and he also gave a promise of a land, and he gave his promise in Genesis chapter 21. And now I've got a certain amount of notes here. If I get to the end, I'm not going to go any farther because I won't have time to. It'll be a pivotal point. I can't go any farther, so we'll go as far as we can today. I think, don't we have one more Sunday school before the youth camp? Because youth camp is 2 weeks, right? So, okay, so that's what we do. So, in Genesis chapter 21, so God has promised a son. He's already given one son. Well, he didn't give a son. Abram and Sarah went around God's plan and got a son. It's not the one God asked for, God's the one promised. So in Genesis 21, verse 1, it says, and the Lord visited Sarah as he said. Remember 2 weeks ago, when he came to Sarah, he told her, he said, at this time next year, he told her a specific time that you'd have that baby. So it says, and the Lord visited Sarah as he said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time which God had spoken to him. And Abram called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. Isaac means laughter. The name means laughter. But it don't mean laughter as in a good joke. It means laughter as in mocking, a mocking kind of laughter. So that's what his name meant. Now, those names they gave in those days were not just random, pulled out of a book somewhere. They had a meaning behind their name. So but Isaac means a mocking gesture or a mocking laughter. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, and as God had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. And Sarah said, God had made me to laugh, so that all will hear me laugh. All that hear will laugh with me. And she said, who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah would give him children suck? For I have borne him a son in my old age. And the child grew. Remember now, he's already got one son. And Abraham loved Ishmael. We think about Ishmael being an outcast, but Abraham loved him. Whenever God promised him Isaac, he says, no. He said, I've got Ishmael. Make him my seed. Remember? And he said, no, that's not the one I chose. So Abraham loves Ishmael. But he should. He's his father. So that should be his love. But he said, then the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast for the same day Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw Hagar, the Egyptian, which had borne Abraham mocking. Wherefore she said to Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her servant. They're over their life and they're making fun of the new son because they thought that his son was Ishmael, should be in the seed. Remember, the tradition is firstborn son gets the biggest portion. They are the one who gets the birthright. So to them, they thought that Ishmael should got it. And that's the whole reason that they're fighting right now. Arabs who came from Ishmael still believe that they should have the birthright because he was the firstborn son. We'll get into that a little bit later, but we're trying to read on the other side. So she sees him mocking over there. And she said, cast out this bondwoman and her son. And for the son and the bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even as with Isaac. And this thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight. Could you imagine being a dad and having to run your son off? That's got to be tough. It's bad enough when your son leaves, even when you get married and move off, that's bad enough. But to kick him out, tell him to get lost, not because they did anything wrong, except they laughed, they mocked. Now, Sarah's name for Isaac was laughing and mocking anyway, but here it's kind of ironic that she's kicking her out because she's doing the same thing. Sounds like there's a family issue going on. There's some people are weird, people are strange. They're petty, that's a good word. People are petty. All this started because of a little family squabble of 2 women, 1 man, and 2 kids started the war that we're fighting today because it started because of a family feud.
Well, Preston, I say it's petty, but also that's kind of heavy too. I mean, like it was done weird, and God didn't want it to be done that way. That's the reason it started. Sarah never besought God on that behalf, and the Egyptian slave had no say in it, and that's not God's will either. So I probably shouldn't say petty because it was pretty heavy stuff, I could put myself in either woman's position, and, that's why the ending of the story is so beautiful, the God who sees, because women were not seen, and they made a mess of that stuff.
So it really started for her with her not waiting on the Lord, or settling in his will, because, to men, having a son was a big thing. Like it was really the thing, like the most important thing. Yeah. And she wanted to please him so much got ahead of God. I feel like she got ahead of God
I know she did, yeah.
by doing that. So that's probably where it started, and we just got to check and see if that's where we started.
I think it goes to show that we cause our own problems, and then we look to God. Where we should have done that. We should have looked to God first, and then, more God, no problems.
Kind of like you reap what you sow, right? Yeah, they should have just waited. Sometimes it's hard. Waiting is hard.
Yeah, because she's old. She waited like a long time. Yeah. This wasn't just, that normal period of waiting. This was okay.
She was older than anybody in the building right now. And she hadn't had a baby yet. And she's supposed to be the mother of many nations, and she's older than anybody in here right now.
And don't we do that? I know I do. Like, okay. So maybe God wants me to step in here. Maybe God wants me to do this. How arrogant.
Yep, that's true.
A gauge of God's will.
No.
Right.
Our time is not a gauge of God's will.
That's true.
We're so consumed by time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All this started because of impatience. Impatience. So he says, get him out. She said to get him out. And it said it was grievous in Abraham's sight in verse 11 because of his son. And God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad, and because of the bondwoman. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken to her voice, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. And also of thy son of the bondwoman I will make him a nation, because he is thy seed. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water, and gave it unto Hagar, put it under her shoulder, or on her shoulder, and the child, and sent her away. And they departed and went into the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was spent, and she cast it under one of the shrubs. So she's out of water. She didn't get very far. She's out of water, throws the bottle down, and she went and sat down against a good way off, about a bow shot. She put him, I missed something. I missed a verse somewhere because she puts the kid under, yeah. She cast the child under one of the shrubs. So the baby, she throws him under the shrubs. And she goes and sits down a great way off and said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad. And the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven. This is twice now God's talked to her. Once he said, I see you. Now he says, I hear you. I am thankful for a God who sees, But she says, he heard her. And he said to her, what aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thy hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opens her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water, and gave the lad to drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew, and he dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. So Ishmael becomes husband to an Egyptian because she's an Egyptian. And this is Abraham's son, firstborn son, but he's part Hebrew and he's part Egyptian. And that's where a lot of the trouble goes now, back into the Arab nations. So in verse 22, it says, it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Philcol, the chief captain of the host, spake to Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. Now therefore swear unto me by God that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, that thou shalt do unto me, and the land wherein thou hast sojourned. So Abraham said, I swear. So they made a league. He said, I'll do you right. I ain't going to do you wrong. I won't hurt your family. And what's his name? Abimelech said, I know God's with you. And I ask you, please, just to hurt my family while you're here. Because he could see God's blessing on Abraham. So Abraham and him made a covenant together. And in 25, it said, Abraham reproved Abimelech because of the well of water, which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. And Abimelech said, I wot not who hath done this thing, neither didst thou tell me, yet neither yet I heard of it, but today. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave to Abimelech, and they made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what meanest these 7 ewe lambs that thou hast set by themselves? But he said, for these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take in my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. So he was making a covenant. I'm going to rebuild this well here, but this is the covenant between me and you. You're not going to take my well away from me anymore. Water was a big thing over there. It's still a big thing because it's a desert country. It's a really bad place. But if you have a well, you don't want to lose your source of water. And another place, I think I get to it today, they came in and filled in their wells. So it's kind of like, it's a bad thing to lose your source of water. It's your supply line, it's your lifeline. So he made a covenant with Abimelech. And in verse 31 it says, wherefore he called the place Beersheba, because they swear both of them. So that well today is still Beersheba, as far as I know. And Beersheba, all through the whole Bible, we'll read that Beersheba. It's talking about a place where Abraham made a covenant with Abimelech to build a well that they would not ever fill it back in again, and they made a covenant between the two of them. And Abimelech is the Philistine king. You know, the Philistines were an enemy of God's people, but this is way before Israel ever became into existence. They made a covenant that that well would still be there. It says in verse 32. Yeah, 32. And thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up, and Phil called the chief captain of this host, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba, and called thereon the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the Philistines' land many days. You know what sojourn means? You reside, but you're not a citizen of it. You're just a stranger in that land. You just come here for a short time. We're supposed to be sojourning here. We're just here for a short time. Yeah, we should not get so attached to this world we forget that, hey, we're not citizens of this country. We're citizens of a heavenly country. And if we get so tied down that we forget that we belong to a heavenly nation, a heavenly country. But that's the story that we read in the Bible about Ishmael and Isaac and the beginning of them. And I started looking, the Quran. I got a copy of the Quran. The guy gave me one the other day. I've not read it yet, but I've got one. But I studied some different places in it. The Quran will collaborate a lot of the Bible stories because they want to prove that they are part of Ishmael's lineage, which they really are. They're part of it. Abraham has a lot of kids because he has Arabs and he has Jewish people, and he also now has us because we're our spiritual sons of Abraham. We're part of the true seed. I'm thankful for the true seed that God, whenever God was talking to Abraham about a seed that would last forever, he wasn't talking about the people that live on earth. He's talking about a spiritual seed, which is Jesus. And we're part of that today. But the people in Islam have another version of the story of Abraham and Hagar. And I'm going to read you that. This is what they say, okay?
Muhammad actually is the one who wrote the Quran.
Yes.
But he did a lot of, so a scribe in the Old Testament would transfer word for word, and he would go back and check. They had to check 6 times each word. So they looked 6 times to make sure they were copying the right word. Muhammad simply took the Bible and wrote the Quran based off what he thought God had in store for the Arabic nation. And Muhammad claimed to be a direct descendant of Ishmael.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for us to understand that there are a lot of similarities in the Quran from the Bible. Jesus is recognized by Muslims.
Yep.
They also have their own end-time prophecy.
Yep.
And so when you read a story out of the Quran, it's enough. And Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world right now. because it's based off principles of some truth. So it's important for us to know when you read the Quran, there's a lot of things, there are literally verses out of the Bible that are directly written in the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
They're word for word.
Mm-hmm.
So when you read it, it's no wonder that people are like, wow, this is just like the Bible.
Yep.
It's not.
We got to remember too, we've always read and heard the Bible here. They've always heard and read the Quran there. So as much as we believe what we believe, they believe what they believe because that's all they've ever heard. So the best way to defeat false doctrine is not with a rifle, it's with truth. Truth will set you free. It's hard to get to them, but if we can get truth to them, they can actually get freedom. And if you get the truth to them, they'll quit shooting you. You know? But the Islam version of this story is like this. In Islam, the story of Abraham and Hagar is essential to their faith because Hagar is the mother of their patriarch, Ishmael. So Hagar is their Sarah to us, or to the Jews. So the story of Abraham and Hagar is central to their faith, and the event of him sending her away is understood as divine commanded test of faith, not an act of Sarah's jealousy. So it was really, to them, they think, well, that God was just testing Hagar's faith by sending her out into the wilderness by herself. According to the Quran and Islamic tradition, Abraham and his wife Sarah were childless despite God's promise. This is what they say. This is exactly what the Bible says, that they were childless. Sarah, having grown old, suggests Abraham take Hagar, an Egyptian princess, as a wife to bear a child. Hagar became pregnant and bore a son, Ishmael, whom she named God Has Heard. When Sarah later gave birth to Isaac, tension arose in the Islamic account, and here's their account. So that part is the same. Sarah's jealousy was not the cause of banishment. Rather, God commanded Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael away as a trial of faith. The Quran recounts that Abraham obeyed, leaving them in the desert near Mecca, and Ishmael was still an infant. The act was meant to strengthen Abraham's trust in God's promise that Isaac would be his heir, also affirming that Ishmael would be a great nation. Obedience to God's command. This is a teaching according to them. Abraham's compliance shows the highest level of submission to divine will, even in difficult circumstances, which I agree with that. That's definitely a difficult circumstance to send your son away with just nothing but a loaf of bread and a bottle of water. That's got to be tough. Going out to who knows where. But it says their version is the banishment was a trial to see if Abraham would remain steadfast to his monotheism and trust in God's plan. They're big on monotheism, and I am too. I believe in one God, but my God has three parties. But to them, that's blasphemy. To even say God has a son is blasphemy to a Muslim. I actually asked my friend that question. He never had to respond to it. They can't take that. But it says the story culminates in a miraculous Zamzam well. They call it the Zamzam. It's Beersheba in the Bible. They call it Zamzam. Z-A-M, where God provided water for Hagar and Ishmael, symbolizing divine care and the foundation for Mecca. Now, Mecca is their Jerusalem. It's their holy city. As a matter of fact, to my knowledge, unless something's changed, only Muslims are allowed to come in that city. If you're a Christian, you're not even allowed to come into the city at all. Not even to visit, just to see the stone that they call, what's that stone called, Brother Ken? The Kaaba. We're not even allowed to go see it. I mean, even if it's like a tourist attraction, if you're not Muslims, because they say that we would defile their city because we're not a Muslim. While Isaac was the heir to the covenant, God assured Abraham that Ishmael would be a great nation, underscoring the value of God's creation. I'm just reading what they say. In the Judeo-Christian narrative, this is the one we listen to, Sarah's jealousy over Ishmael's mockery to Isaac led to her to demand Abraham send them away. In Islam, the detail omitted, the focus that God's command was on obedience. The significance in Islam, Hagar and Ishmael are honored as matriarchs and patriarchs of the Islamic faith. The event is commemorated every year at the, and I can't read Arabic, so it's Hajj, H-A-J-J, Hajj rituals, where pilgrims visit the Zamzam well every year. And reinforces the Islamic faith, emphasis on faith, obedience, and divine providence. In summary, in Islam, Abraham's sin of Hagar was a divine ordained act of faith testing, not a result of jealousy. Both sides have a story surrounding the same event because both of them have a tie, they have a link to that. Then you get into the sacrifice. If you read in Genesis chapter 22, it says, it came to pass, in verse 1, it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, saying, Abraham, he said, behold, here am I. And he said, take now thy son, thine only son. Now, he's got two sons. But God said, take thy son, thine only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, to get thee to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering upon the mountain which I will tell thee. So in the Quran version, that son, they put in there Ishmael. That Ishmael was the one that he took, not Isaac. They changed that. But it's, like I said, their book is written in 900 years after this account, so it's been changed to distort it. But they use Ishmael in their story. Just a side note while I'm here, I've seen it many, many times. In Hebrews, we talked about Abraham had faith that God could raise him up after he killed him because if he sacrificed him, he'd raise him up. It goes much deeper than that because he had faith he could raise him up for ashes because he was supposed to not be just a sacrifice, he was supposed to be a burnt offering. He was going to actually burn him, and he still thought God had the power to raise him from ashes. So that his faith is deeper than just a dead son on the altar. His faith was from ashes God could bring him back. That's a side note. But anyway, so they both teach a sacrifice test of Abraham, but they use different sons. Because, remember, Ishmael is the oldest, but God said here, thy only son, Isaac. Let me see, I think I just said that. Okay, the Quran has surahs. Surahs are chapters. In Surah 37, 99 through 107, describes how Abraham, at the age of when his son could work, he said, "Oh, my son," this is quoting their script text, "Oh, my son, I have seen in a dream that I must sacrifice you, so tell me what you think." So he asked Ishmael, "What do you think? Should I kill you or not?" So I would say no, if it was me. If I'm the one, I'd say, no, I'd better not. But he said, oh, and this is according to them, Ishmael said, "Oh, my father, do as you are commanded. You will find me, if Allah wills, of the steadfast." This exchange shows both father and son willing to submit to God's will. Muslim tradition identifies the son Ishmael, not Isaac, based on genealogical links to Prophet Muhammad. As Brother Ken said, they claim that Muhammad was the great son of Ishmael. And the construction of the Kaaba, how do you say that word? Kaaba. Yeah. The Quran does not name the son, but the classic, so it's not named in which son it was, but they just, by tradition, say, well, that's got to be Ishmael. It wasn't Isaac. Surely it wasn't Isaac because it's not part of their narrative, you know. Some Muslims argue that Abraham's dream was divine revelation and not a command to commit sin, as God would never advocate wrongdoing. So some of them think that's just a symbolic thing. Don't kill him, really. Just, you know, would you sacrifice him? But that's what they say. Kaaba, that's closer than I got, you know. Yeah. So they believe in the same sacrifice that we've heard all of our lives. They just replaced that son with Ishmael instead of Isaac. That's why it's so confusing, because they share a lot of the old stuff. They even believe in Jesus. Like he said, they believe in the virgin birth of Jesus, but they do not believe in the death of Jesus. They do, but not yet. He ain't died yet. And to them, and I'm getting off my notes here, but to them, he was born of a virgin, not in Bethlehem. She wasn't with Joseph. She was by herself under a palm tree, and he was born under a palm tree just to Mary. and he lived a good life. He was a prophet. He was the best prophet of all. God took him away secretly. They replaced Judas for Jesus on the cross to fool everybody. It's just what they say. And then Jesus will come back in the future, and that's his second coming. But then he'll come down and he'll affirm that Allah was God, and then he'll die. That's the Islamic version of Jesus. So if you hear a Muslim talking about Jesus, it's not the same guy. Not the same guy. Because my Jesus did die, but he didn't stay dead. Because the Bible said without the remission of blood, without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sins. So if he didn't die, I'm still lost, and you're still lost. So Jesus did die. He did stay dead for 3 days, but he did resurrect. So when they talk about Jesus, it's not the same guy. It's the same Moses, it's the same Abraham, the same Sarah, the same Ishmael. They have different stories about them, but the same one we talk about. When they get into Jesus, not the same guy. So let me see here. I think I read that part. So the significance of this test of Abraham by sacrificing Ishmael, they have an annual feast that commemorates Abraham's willingness to sacrifice and God's provision of a ram. So they do even teach that there was a ram that was found and he was killed instead of the son. And Muslims perform Qurban to reaffirm faith, gratitude, and submission to God. We'll skip that part. Okay. I don't want to read y'all. I got a bunch of notes here about Islam, and I don't want to glorify them at all. But I just want to tell you how there are similarities, but there are big differences. There's enough similarities to get you thinking, but there's enough wrong to send you to hell. Okay. So now, in Genesis 23, we read about the death of Sarah and Abraham's attempt to buy a burial plot from the Canaanites. Abraham tried to buy a plot of land. The guy said, no, you're a great man around here. And I'm going to paraphrase. He said, you're a great man around here. You just pick a spot of land. Whoever owns it will give it to you. And Abraham said, well, there's a guy got a field over yonder, and I like it, but it's got a good cave on it. And I think it's Magpelia or something like that. And he said, the guy said, well, it's yours. Just go get it. Abraham said, no, I won't do that. I'll buy it from you. He said, no, it's yours. The guy said, that thing's worth 400 shekels of silver. So Abraham told his merchant, said, count out 400 shekels of silver, and he bought it. He wouldn't take free land. He bought that land. And that's where he buried Sarah. Both Islam and Christianity and the Jews agree on that account. Now, Abraham has already sent his son out in the wilderness, hadn't seen him since he was a kid. Whenever Sarah died, they both come back together and help bury their mom, or bury Isaac's mom. If we read in Genesis 24:1, it said, Abraham was old and well stricken in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all his things. I think I skipped part of it. I did. I paraphrased it, but you can read in the 23rd chapter where they come back together, Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac, to help bury Sarah. And that is mentioned in the Quran, and they use that kind of like as a hope that one day that they could somehow work things out. But it's never going to work out because they cannot get over the land issue. So in Genesis 24:1, it said, Abraham was old, well stricken in years, in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said unto his eldest servant in the house that ruled all that he had, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh. I looked that up. Put your hand under my thigh. That was more than a handshake. That was a solemn oath. That was their covenant. That is very, very important. When you put your hand on somebody's thigh, you're pledging your life. You're saying, I'll guarantee you, whatever you ask me to do, I'll do it. So when he says, put your hand under my thigh, and I make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that thou shalt not take a wife of my son of all of the Canaanites. He's wanting Isaac to get married and wants him to get him a wife. In those days, they didn't get to go out there and say, I like her. I think I'll marry her. they prearranged marriages. And he's telling his servant, Isaac needs a wife, but promise me under oath you won't take one of these Canaanite women. You go back to where I came from, you pick one out there. So he said, I'll do that. And he said, but thou shalt go, in verse 4, but thou shalt go into my country and to my kindred and take a wife unto my son Isaac. And the servant said unto him, peradventure the woman will I pray, said, peradventure the woman not willing to follow me into this land. Must needs I bring thy son again to the land from whence thou comest? And Abraham said, beware thou that thou bring not my son thither again. Don't take my boy over there. Just go get her a wife. Go get him a wife, I mean. And he said, okay, well, I'll go get one. I'm going to paraphrase a long chapter. But so he goes back. He has gifts to go back and try to find a wife for Isaac. This is important, and I promise you this. But he goes back to his land that he came from to get a wife. He takes it back, and he comes to a well. He said, I'm going to sit down at this well here. And he said, God, if you really want this to happen, make the woman that I asked to give me a drink of water, and then let her suggest, let me water your camels also. That was his sign. That was his way of saying, I know that she's the one. So he goes back, he sits there for a while. I don't know how long he sits there, what his other criteria was. He finds a real pretty girl. And he says, that's part of it, I guess. But he says, if you read it, it says she was, but anyway, she's a pretty girl. And he says, his name was Rebecca. He asked her to drink. She did everything. He asked God for the sign. She said, here's you something to drink. Oh, by the way, let me feed you, water your camels while you're here. And whenever he did that, she did that, the man said, who's your daddy? Who you from? Where you from? He'll make sure that he was of the lineage of Abraham. Like he made a promise. He made a vow, not just a pinky promise. He made a vow that I'll get you somebody from your family. Whenever she said who her daddy was, he pulled out this huge gold ring. In those days, you did have to prearrange marriages, but you didn't get them for free. You had to pay a dowry. You had to pay something for them, sheep, goat, something. You got to give something for it. So he pulled out a big, huge gold ring and 2 gold bracelets and said, you got room for us to stay the night? They said, yeah. She said, I got room at the house. Come over to the house. They go there, and she gets there to her brother, and her brother says, who's that out there in the yard, And he said, he came here to find a wife. And the guy walks out, and she told him the whole story. And he gives them that gold ring, and he said, yeah, come on in. And they fed him. And then they let him stay there that whole night. And he said, the servant asked Rebecca's brother, told him, said, I think she's the one God wants to marry my master's son. They said, well, we're okay with it, but you got to ask her first. And I'm paraphrasing. But so they asked her in the morning, and she said, yes, I'll go with you. But they said, well, give us at least 10 days to spend with her before she leaves, because she's not going across town. She's not going up the mountain. She's going to a foreign land that they may never see her again. They said, give us 10 days to spend with her. So they did that. She gets her stuff, and she takes off back to the land where Abraham's son's at. That's where we come to in Genesis 24:59. That's as concise as I can make it. In Genesis 24:59, it says, and they sent away, the family sent her away, sent Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, thou art our sister. Be thou mother of thousands of millions. That's a big thing. Not go have some fun. He's going to have thousands of millions of kids. Yeah, there's no pressure. And let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them. And Rebekah arose and her damsels, and they rode upon camels and followed the man. And the servant took Rebekah and went his way. And Isaac came to the well of how do you say that word? Leharoya. It's the well of the God who sees me. That much I know. So this is where Abraham and Hagar and Ishmael met God. And so they come to that well. It says, and Isaac went out to meditate in the field at the eventide, and he lifted up his eyes, and he saw, and behold, the camels were coming. And Isaac lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she lighted off the camel. For she said unto the servant, what man is this that walketh in the field to meet us? The servant said, "It is my master." Therefore she took a veil, covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things he had done. And Isaac brought her to her mother's tent, Mother Sarah's tent, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And Isaac was comforted in his mother's death. This is the beginning of the lineage that brought Jesus into us. It says this is where the Jews started right here, in this lineage right here. We saw where Abraham had 2 sons, but the Israelites came out this leg of that lineage. It gets to be really, really broad. I'm not going to go into all of them, tell all the kids and all the grandkids and stuff, but I'm going to show you that this is where the side that we see comes from. There's another side that we'll get into later. This is the lineage that brought Jesus right here. What time is it? Oh my word, it's time. I ain't nowhere near done. This will stop right there because I got a lot more, so we'll stop right there. So anyway, the lineage that brought Jesus comes from the side of Isaac. And the Jews see it, but they don't see Jesus. But the Muslims recognize all we said so far. It gets to be sticky when you get into the other side. They don't agree on much else after this. I'm going to stop right there. I'm out of time. Anything you need to add before we get ready?
Both the Jews and the Muslims want to rule the world, not themselves.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. Both of them are causing trouble right now.